Well, hello everybody and welcome back to Sovereign Gaming in Life Sims, the YouTube channel where I build worlds, lots, and share my thoughts on video games in the life simulation gaming space. We are indeed back in my custom SimCity world here, and yes, this intro is a little quicker than the rest, and the reason being is that I have got to talk about the Observatory Tower changes before they disappear shortly. So yeah, as you will see on screen there, I'm just making a couple of changes this episode to some of the spot builds that I have been doing throughout the last little while here. And when it came to the Observatory Tower, I just needed to make a couple of small changes with the elevators, and I also wanted to add in a suggestion as well that was left by one of you wonderful people out there, and that was of course to put in the genetic testing object that came with the Sims 3 University. Of course, I forget what the actual object is called, but it definitely deserved a spot here, so thanks again for such a great suggestion. You see, I really wasn't kidding when I mentioned that I had to be quick with that intro, because if you pretty much blinked, you missed the object placement. In retrospect, I'm not too sure why I filmed that, but I did. Yeah, let's move on now to the library and some of the edits that I wanted to do there. Now, when it came to the library, the color has always bothered me. Even after leaving the lot, I felt like the color just didn't suit the library, and so that was really my main opportunity here to really change it. And so I decided to change it to a light brown here, and I really took some inspiration off of another build, and I'm just going to put that screenshot up on screen so that you guys can see exactly who I'm referencing here. Of course, I forget the name as I'm recording the audio, but anyways, it should be up on screen, and the credit will be due on there as well. But yeah, I took a little bit of inspiration from that build, and I particularly liked the color that was used on an older structure, and so I decided to apply the change here to the actual library build. I didn't mind the red, but it really bothered me. And at the time, I really just couldn't think of any other color that I wanted to use. I was experimenting, and you would have seen this in the library episode. I was experimenting a lot with different kind of whites and browns, and it just really wasn't fitting what I had envisioned for the library. So I had decided to just go ahead and commit myself to this brown color, just as inspired by the other build that I would have screenshotted up on screen. You know what? It's so embarrassing that I've completely forgotten the username and everything as I go to record the audio, but you know what? Screenshots will suffice in this case, so check them out if you are looking for some extraordinary builds. I'm not I don't think I'm very good at doing any classical architecture style builds, and this was one of them. And unfortunately, part of the reason why the library turned out the way it did, which in my opinion is still pretty okay, is just because of the train track placement that I had to do in the Creator World series. And so that kind of forced my hand in just kind of the form that it was taking. And even though my hand was forced a little bit here and there, I still think that the library turned out. I just needed to change the color. And as you'll see in the screenshots, I also added in some more columns as well, just because I felt that the columns that were sitting outside of the front entrance there were just not doing it enough justice, and it wasn't emulating that it was a building that was using classical architecture. So that is something that I really wanted to reiterate there, and I think that the columns turned out okay just by combining it with the walls and the platforms. And yeah, very happy with the way that the library turned out and how it's looking now with these edits. If you do have any other suggestions for the library edits, or for any lot really, feel free to drop a comment. I really don't mind, and I'm very open to the fact that I might just go ahead and do a video with a commenter suggestion for any kind of edits for any of my speed builds. So yeah, very open to that. If you wanted to leave a suggestion, you're more than welcome to. Speaking of which, the house itself, the single family home in Bridgeview, really bothered me. It bothered me in a lot of ways. Firstly, the inspirational shots that I was using, my references for the interior decorating, bothered me to no end. I couldn't find any good references at the time, and when I came back to the Bridgeview house, I had actually found much better references. So I was very happy to just kind of use those when I get to the interior part of it. But that's not what you're seeing on screen here, because there was also another big issue with this house that was really bothering me, and that was the stair placement. You see, I am kind of the mind where a single grid width of stairs is more like a really narrow staircase, and I didn't want that for this house. And I think that narrow staircases have their time and place, but I just didn't want it in this house. I kind of felt like it was just not doing the layout any justice. Now, I absolutely love the style that I used for this house, and so I wanted to keep it the very same style. But where I really wanted to make some changes was with the staircase placement. And because I have a basement underneath a foundation, that is a whole dog's breakfast pretty much of a mess for me to work with. You see, when you have a basement and you put a foundation on top of it, the game does something really weird in The Sims 3, and it kept claiming as I was trying to replace the stairs that there was something already built on top of it. And so what I ended up having to do was delete the lot entirely. Luckily, I went in and saved the floors and the wallpaper, so I didn't have to completely redo that. But the stair placement was really a huge issue here when I wanted to replace just a 1 grid into a 2 grid worth of stairs. And it was very important for me to get this right for this house, because I am pretty much going to be reusing this shell for a house for other house builds whenever we get to the Bridgeview neighborhood build out. So it was very important for me to get this right. And yeah, I also wanted the stairs placed in a particular place as well. I just wanted it to be 1 grid column off from the limits, and I wanted the stairs right up against the basement wall. So there was a lot of consideration that went into this. And yeah, it was bothering me that I wasn't able to achieve it in the first build through. And originally I was just going to leave it as it was, but it just bothered me so much. And to be completely transparent here, when I loaded up my game, I wasn't actually planning on tearing down the house and redoing it. I was actually going to go and do some more work on the Central Park, doing a park build that I never ended up getting started on at the time. So I welcome this as that distraction. The house is indeed still 60s inspired. Like I mentioned before, I found some great references for the 60s and different kinds of rooms there. So I just kind of leaned into those references more and tried to emulate them more within this build. Whereas before, I think I was using a 60s/70s reference. And even though there's a whole pack that's 70s, 80s, and 90s stuff with The Sims 3, it doesn't give us a whole lot of great 70s things. So I had decided to completely kibosh that idea and just lean into the 60s. Again, decade interior decorating isn't exactly my forte. It's not something that I would say is a part of my wheelhouse, but this go around, I actually think that I did it some justice. I still ended up keeping some rooms empty. Specifically, I left the basement as unfinished, and I also made the second bedroom unfurnished as well. And the reason being is that I do want the Bridgeview neighborhood to indeed be that starter neighborhood for players, and in order to do that, the houses actually have to be affordable as it relates to The Sims, which is kind of funny in that art is imitating life here. But yeah, I wanted this house to really end up costing a low enough price for it to feel obtainable for Sims players. If they just got their sim a couple of promotions, or even 2 Sims, just a couple of promotions, this house should be fairly affordable for that couple. And so yeah, that was something that I wanted to do here, because it is part of a much larger project of Bridgeview, which is that starter neighborhood. Now, the street that this house sits on is actually it's sitting right beside a bunch of lots that are right beside it. So, and those lots are exactly the same size as this one. So really, we're going to end up with 2 rows of similar house builds that are of the same size, and there will be some 2 stories in there and also some bungalows with basements as well. Every house within Bridgeview will indeed have a basement, and I'm also going to be making some of them duplexes, so it will help to significantly like lower the price for that. I know that I wanted a mix of duplexes and single family homes that you own straight out in this neighborhood. Within this block here and with the block behind it. And that was something that I really intended on doing. It's something that I am committed to building out. And I know for a fact that if I had decided to make this house into a duplex, there's a way that you can really like cheese the price of the house, and that's just really to place those different markers that came with the late night expansion pack. So if I had really wanted to try and like make this as cheap as I could possibly go, I would have placed like a public lot marker just outside on the grass, for example, and that would have lowered things, or even in the backyard, or even in the garage. That would have all like lowered the price of this quite substantially. But the reason why I wanted to mention this to you guys is that because I am trying to keep the price of a single family home, even in the starter neighborhood, like fairly obtainable for players, I wanted to ask you guys if you wanted me to like go full out in terms of the interior decorating and all of that for the Bridgeview neighborhood single family homes. I know I likely will for the duplexes because those will automatically be much cheaper, but for the single family homes, I just kind of want to put that question out there for you guys if you wanted me to just go full out with the interior decorating. I held off, even though I put in a pretty expensive picture in the dining room, but I felt that I held off a lot just in terms of the interior decorating, because I could have easily taken it much further than I actually did. And even though I still love the way that the new 60s inspired stuff kind of came out here, I was still holding back in terms of decor and all of that. So yeah, I wanted to put that question out there for the single family homes. Do you want me to just go all out with them, or do you want me to hold back and try to make it as affordable as possible for Sims that are in the starter neighborhood? Now don't worry, there are going to be plenty of options going ahead. Like there are plenty of apartments, duplexes, and other lower priced housing options within the Bridgeview neighborhood of my SimCity. But yeah, for the single family homes, I just kind of felt like it was stifling my creativity just a little bit. Not that I'm Michelangelo with this with The Sims 3 or anything, but I held off on a game. I held back just in favor of the gameplay there and making it into a true starter home, or as close as I could possibly get to it. Now, whenever we get to the Blue Water Village suburb, I'm absolutely going all out for those suburban house builds there, because those are going to be quite big, and those are going to be quite spacious and all of that. So those I'm absolutely not holding back on. With my suburban single family homes, typically they range between like the high 100s to like lower 200,000 simoleons in terms of price ranges. So I go pretty hard when it comes to suburban builds and single family homes within a suburban setting. But for these urban narrow homes, that's kind of where I am sort of getting tripped up a little bit in terms of decor. So yeah, feel free to comment below with what you think I should do. When I went to do all of the edits for the house, I was actually originally thinking of making it its own episode, not as something to like replace what I would have regularly scheduled, but also something that would have just been like an extra video to publish during the week. I decided not to do that. I just kind of decided that because I had this edit episode already kind of being worked on, that I would just kind of slot it in here and talk a little bit more about the house during this time. It just felt more natural that way, besides like the edits that you would have seen on the house in the edits episode, like in the old version of the edits episode, I suppose. It's kind of hard to explain, but what you would have seen is you would have just seen me change the roof, because the roof was bothering me a lot, and that wasn't enough to really give you guys. So yeah, it would have just felt weird having this episode come out and then next week have like a bonus episode. It didn't make sense to me anyway. So I made an executive decision just to like put in all of the footage from the in-depth edits that I did for the single family house into this episode. But yeah, I mentioned it a little earlier about the references, and so I really want to take a moment to just kind of share them with you. So I don't know how I missed this when I was originally doing the house. Actually, I do know how I missed it. I was searching up for 70s inspirational builds and 70s designs, and I just really wasn't finding anything, surprisingly. And the 70s is like a very iconic era in terms of interior design and all of that, or at least I thought it was. Maybe it was more so the 60s, because every house kind of has its heyday. I mean, even when trying to find 90s references for the apartments was quite a project. Like, I wasn't able to find them. But yeah, I got a bunch of 60s references that I liked, and the reason why I picked them is because they all seem to go together. The only thing that I really kept from the first version of the house was really the wallpaper and the hallways. I felt that those were really reminiscent of like 60s or 70s, so I just kind of kept the wallpaper the same. The kitchen is also kept the same, but that was absolutely done on purpose because that was the only good 60s reference that I found from the first build out of this house. So I just kind of kept that in that awful green, olive green kitchen with white countertops. To me, it looks off. Well, to me, I don't want to call something awful when it was very reminiscent of the 60s, but it would never happen ever again. And I think that there's a reason for it. And, but yeah, it was very reminiscent of the 60s. Again, I don't mean to call it awful, but it's just not something that I would ever take to anymore or design with, or even with that kind of a palette. But I liked it so much for the 60s era that obviously it came back. But another reference that I found was something that was not necessarily in the 60s, but more so inspired by the 60s, and that was for the living room. I really liked the green wall there, and that was something that I found like with the 60s and 70s when doing my research, is that there was a lot of green, and not just like the olive green, but there would also be some evergreen shades here and there. And I found that very interesting. Also, like the woods were very, they had more red and oranges to them. So I really tried to lean into that. And with the living room inspiration that I found, it's clearly not something that's straight out of the 60s, but actually inspired by the 60s. And so I really like that color palette, and I just decided to use that for the living room here. I decided to actually put in a couple of feature walls here and there, like with the wood paneling, because I remember that being very much reminiscent of those times anyways. And then the blinds that I added in the living room and actually the bedroom also felt very very retro. Like, you would have these really long blinds, and I am sure that they are on their way back to trend again, but you'd have these really long blinds that felt like they belonged in an office building, but you would have them here. So yeah, I decided to just kind of lean into that style, even though it's not necessarily something that I would ever decorate with. But that's the whole point of choosing the 60s, was as inspiration, was just to get myself out of that pigeonhole of decorating with the same thing all the time. But yeah, I really like how it turned out the second go around, and the living room was something that I really enjoyed. I didn't change too much from the dining room because I actually liked it. The things that I liked the most from the first version of the house was the dining room and the kitchen. That was really it, and I didn't mind the layout. Although the layout still needed to be adjusted with those basement stairs and stuff, but I've already discussed that. The other big change that I would have made in terms of style choices was the bathroom. So the bathroom this time around, because the first time around, I think I must have just had my head stuck in the 90s, but here we go again with the bathroom. And this time I used this as my reference point. It came up when I was searching for 60s bathrooms, and I really loved it because it totally has a different color scheme. It has a yellow, which I have never really used in bathrooms. It had the tiling. It had a little bit of that shag carpet, which I just couldn't really find. And these like teal or robin's egg blue countertops was absolutely perfect, so I wanted to do that. The wallpaper and the counters matching was something that was new to me, so I decided to just kind of lean into that. And the only pattern that I found that was similar to what you see in the reference photo is actually like a wicker pattern, so I used that. I really like how the bathroom turned out. It feels retro to me, and I hope it emulates that on screen as well. The other big change that I made was to the master bedroom, and the reference that I have listed up here is actually a reference from the Sims resource. And I really love the wallpapers. I love the setup of it all. I really like the bright colors. Again, this is something that's more inspired by the 60s as opposed to it being a direct 60s reference, but I felt like it felt the vibe. I felt like it fit the vibe of the house so well, and it just kind of told that story a little bit more. So I decided to put that in. I have this I really struggle with creating closets in The Sims 3, and that's really, I think I've blamed it before on there being a lack of objects, a lack of closet appropriate doors, but you know what? I'm just gonna have to start facing that problem space more head on, because I thought of a couple of ideas now that I'm recording the audio on how to incorporate closets more naturally than what I did here. I just kind of put in a couple of walls, if it's not showing on screen already, and put in a dresser, which is the only functional object for proper closet space, and called it a day. But yeah, I'm gonna look into that more and take a more hands-on approach to that. Like, I think I did okay in the crumple bottom chateau build for closets. I think I faked it well enough is what I mean to say, but you know, I need to take a stronger, better look at this. The other big change would have been the spare bedroom. Again, it has like a really bright orange carpet, a really like more of a blood orange carpet, and then an orange yellow wallpaper, really loud. And I really like that. So I put it in there. Just the carpet and the wallpaper. I put it in there and called it a day, just to try and keep the place as cheap as possible, as it is in a starter neighborhood. But yeah, even though I just put in the carpet and the wallpaper, I thought it really came together nicely. And of course, the basement has been left untouched. That I am leaving up to the Sims player themselves to fix that and adjust that as they need. But yeah, like I mentioned earlier, if you guys want me to go ham on decorating these houses, feel free to drop that comment. I'm not going to be back in Bridgeview for a while here, so yeah, if you want me to just absolutely go hard on the starter homes for single family homes, that is, drop that comment, let me know, and I will certainly oblige. When it comes to the duplex and two-story versions of this single-family home, I've really set myself up for success in this, and that I can pretty much just copy and paste this house over into the other lots that I want to apply it to, and then just kind of build out from there. But the real saving grace here is the actual layout of it. As you see in the bungalow version of the single family home, there is actually space for an office or some sort of a den. And again, I left that as blank for the players there and to also like keep the costs down. But that's something that is very much like a bonus space for players to have. And I think that it was something that kind of surprised me in a little bit. In the two-story homes and like the duplexes, of course, like that space and the bathroom there would obviously be shortened, and like the bathroom would be reduced from a full bathroom into a powder room per se, and there would be obviously no office since a staircase would take up that space there to like get Sims onto the second level. But another saving grace, like with the layout that I have used here, is really the porch size and the parlor or the foyer size as well. I left the foyer undecorated, and as I say this, as I type this in now, I could have easily just like thrown in a coat rack and like faked some sort of a closet space, but I had decided to only get that idea when I decided to record the audio, so that's always wonderful for me. But yeah, in future I will certainly make sure to do that, because a clothes rack is not going to make or break a Sims bank when trying to afford this place. But yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. The foyer space and the entranceway space, I guess, really will help to control pedestrian traffic if when I go to convert one of these homes into a duplex, and because I will actually place like NPC doors so that players actually do get real neighbors that spawn. Now the game mechanic is a little crazy when it comes to spawning neighbors in those like NPC doors and whatnot. Like it will overpopulate it most of the time, which is a little annoying, but it's a game mechanic that I can personally ignore, and it's something that I want to offer players as well, so that they actually have a chance to interact with real neighbors if they decide to live in the duplex version of this house. Again, I will release full episodes for when I actually decorate those houses and build those houses. Like I have done here, like with the Bridgeview lots, I will be using different sources of inspiration for what those duplexes or what those single family homes will actually look like on the inside, even though on the outside they're going to look very similar. And yeah, with all the space that I have in the entranceway, I can also move around how the house is laid out, so I can have a more centered porch, or I can have one lean more towards the right. So yeah, there's a lot of flexibility here, and honestly, like whenever I get back to the Bridgeview neighborhood, which won't be for a while, I'll certainly take into consideration like different orientations of how to lay out the house and all that. But yeah, I love how it's laid out. I love that the hallways are laid out the way that they are. It feels like a realistic bungalow building to me that's in an urban area, in terms of it being longer than it is wide, in terms of it having like I don't want to call them narrow hallways, but hallways, because I'm not always the best when it comes to designing houses with hallway space, and I like how the hallways turned out here. I even added in like an extra arch just to kind of give it a little more intrigue into the hallway space. But yeah, love the way that this turned out. Even the bungalow will feel spacious for players that are playing within this neighborhood. And to me, like, it feels like this house like offers so much space and more for players that are looking to buy one of the homes from the starter neighborhood of Bridgeview. So I really like how it all turned out. Of course, it pales in comparison to the Crumple Bottom Chateau and all the space you have to play there, but that is a completely different neighborhood here than Bridgeview. That is Pleasant View, and it's called Pleasant View for a reason. But yeah, here I feel like players get more than enough space to play if they choose this neighborhood as their home and this home as theirs for a bungalow building. Sometimes I feel like bungalows are short players on space just a little bit. But yeah, that is a whole other discussion for another time. So as we finish up with the tours of the finished house, I'm very happy with the house and how it turned out. Again, actually, I love how it turned out. Sometimes I even go back just to visit it and just to see what it looks like on the inside. I love how it turned out. Same with the Crumple Bottom Chateau. Love how that one turned out too. But we're going to move on and do another Bridgeview edit here, and it is really going to be the 3-bedroom apartment. And you know, sometimes like there were some things that I have done like in Create a World that has kind of bit me in the ass, so to speak, and this was actually one of them. And it was not necessarily the build itself, but the layout of the lots. You see, what I had wanted to achieve was a staggered look where you have some towers that are staggered in relation to each other. And so what I did is I put the second tower further back in and extended like the sidewalk for that is directly adjacent to the road. So essentially with the second apartment tower, it's just like it's sandwiched between two sets of sidewalks that are wider than the sidewalk on the road. I hope that makes sense. But what this does, unfortunately, is it kind of cuts off road access from the second apartment, like in a way that doesn't make sense to me. Well, let me reword that. If I wanted to put like a driveway on the second apartment, lot, it wouldn't make sense because you'd be driving over a bunch of sidewalk no matter which way you turn. So I really shot myself on the foot in terms of the lot layout there. And that was a big reason why I wanted to revisit this apartment lot. And that is, as you've probably already seen on screen, is that I really wanted to create like some sort of an underground garage. Now, in the first apartment episode, I tried to do this, and I tried to place like the apartment shell building on top of like a set of walls, and it would just like mess up the floor plan on the top floor. So that wasn't going to happen. So I really had to use a little bit of movie magic, so to speak, or Sims 3 magic, I suppose. And so what I had done is I just wanted some sort of an entrance into the garage. I lowered the floor just a little bit, like within the walls there, and tried to like make it look like it was decreasing. And then I threw in a hidden room marker in there because I honestly knew that no matter what, it's not going to look good when you have ground that's just kind of decreasing, that's right up against the walls. Like, it always does some sort of a weird thing with the textures and all that. So I just threw in a hidden room marker so that when players are actually playing and they see this, they can understand that, hey, it's a garage, it leads down somewhere. And then when you actually go into the basement level, you'll see the parkade structure there, the underground parkade structure there. Again, those university cars from the debug mode are coming in handy for filling up the parking lot, because trust and believe me, like, if you are a builder out there and you build community lots and you put in a bunch of blank parking spaces or empty parking spaces that you actually put real cars on, townies will use it, and they will use it a lot. And then that like spawns like extra cars and stuff. There's a whole NROS mod out there that has settings to help players tackle the whole spawning of cars and all that. So in all of my community builds, I've been trying to put in filled up parking lots, and like with those university assets, debug assets, and then just put in like one parking space for your active household to actually use. So same strategy was placed in here. The other thing, so this whole parkade structure, like having a hidden room with a building with a garage door, and then, you know, using the basement tool to actually create the parkade, is something that I will continue to do throughout all of the urban builds where I want this, because this definitely, this might be the first that you guys have seen, but it definitely won't be the last, since since vehicles and driving is such a huge part of the gameplay with The Sims 3. So yeah, more parkades are to come. This was kind of like my first one. I thought it was going to be a quicker job than it was, but obviously I lied to myself several times when I went to do the edit here, and yeah. So yeah, the parkade structure turned out very well. I made sure to continue to add that for players. For those apartments that are too far, that are sandwiched in between the two sidewalks there, unfortunately, there's nothing that I'm going to have to do, but luckily the game mechanic is that your sim will pocket their cars. So, you know, I don't feel like it's such a bad situation, but it is really annoying that I kind of shot myself in the foot for that. But I mean, you could argue that it's realistic that you don't have parking spaces in these type of apartment buildings, but you know, I really don't like that. Like, the game mechanic in The Sims 3 favors driving so much that it bothers me that players have to force themselves to pocket cars. But hey, this is exactly what Bridgeview is all about. It doesn't give you all of the amenities, but you can afford it. And that's kind of going to be the mentality going forward. And besides, the other apartment is a 1-bedroom anyways. And even though, like, for the other 2 apartment towers that I plan on building are going to be 2 and 3 bedrooms, yeah. It sucks that that half of those apartment towers are just not going to offer players an opportunity to buy cars or have a parking space. But okay, if that's the biggest problem that I have to deal with in this game, then that's fine going forward. Like I said, you could make the case that they wouldn't offer parking spaces in these kind of tower projects. I am sure that I talked too much about the apartment lot edits. We are probably well into the spa now. And when it came to the spa, I had built that extra structure that actually offered spa services so that your Sims could actually enjoy some spa services in real time, in addition to them being able to use the rabbit hole building on the same lot. And there were two things that were really bothering me. First thing was I completely forgot to add in the ticket machine from the Cinema Plum Bob DLC that came from the Sims 3 store. Again, that DLC is just not working for me, so I put it in here because I honestly think that it's just like my own game that isn't making it work. I feel like it's DLC that other people have installed successfully, so I wanted to make sure that it functioned properly for you guys out there. But for me, I can tolerate like busted CC that just isn't killing my game, but but exists nonetheless. Anyways, that was a big one that I wanted to add in here. I just wanted to add some functionality to the spa. The other thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to add some of those fins that you see. You see, the spa has always just like, it's always like seemed to be like a really boring building on the outside. So I decided to add in some fins, had these fins like kind of overhang like some sort of a, had the fins overhang a little bit so that it helped to interact with the sidewalk street just a little more interestingly. And yeah, it also does some wonder for the roof as well. It just kind of adds a lot more intrigue and a lot more, it just makes the building a lot more dynamic, and that's really what I was going for. I'm not very strong in the modern architectural department, but I'm getting better, and I think that this was a great improvement. I think it helps to make the presence of this spa a lot more predominant, and it helps to like blend it in a little better with its surroundings as well, just with those small changes. And yeah, still very happy with the way that it turned out. And yeah, I felt that the fins that I added in here really made a huge difference to the way that the structure looked in the city and how it like interacts with the rest of the city as well. It is a structure that I could have easily bumped it up to 5 floors or even 4 floors if I had so chosen to, and make it like a brick facade and try to like have it blend in as one of those brick buildings that you see all the time in cities, but it just didn't feel right to me, and I really wanted some sort of low-rise modern architecture just like right in the middle of the city center that is ripe for redevelopment someday. But yeah, for now, this is what it looks like, and very happy with it and the way that it turned out for the spa. One of the biggest reasons why this editing episode even exists is the lot that we are doing right now, and that is redoing pretty much the grocery store lot. And yeah, immediately you'll see on screen, I will tear down this townhouse complex. I was so iffy about it at the end of the grocery store build that like it never sat right with me, and I just hated it. And when I started to hate it, that was when I just knew that I had to completely change it and pretty much decimate it. But luckily, it turns out so much better, by the way, in terms of how I blend in the structure. But yeah, luckily, Roaring Heights really came to my rescue here. It is one of my favorite worlds out there, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I decided to load up the world and just kind of see what they were doing, because I knew it had these objects in there that you could place on top of buildings, and it just kind of adds into the skyscraper. Like it adds like skyscraper levels or whatever. So I really wanted to add that into here because I knew it would fit the, I knew it would pair very well with the grocery store, but I didn't understand like how it would mesh with the rest of the building. I basically knew that it looked good in Roaring Heights, but I didn't know how to make it look good in my world. So I had to actually load up Roaring Heights and just kind of take a look at what they did with those shell objects. And really the trick is just trying to get it to match the color and then to match some of the exterior details of it. And so that's what I really tried to do here. Now, There comes a point in all of this where I'm trying to match this particular exterior detail. I don't even know what it's called. It's not an awning. It's just like some sort of a really skinny bump out. And I can get it to match some sizes, some sides, but the game just wouldn't let me attach the object to the side of the building that was just on the edge of the lot. So annoying. Hated that. I used move objects. I used pretty much every cheat under the sun, and I just couldn't get it to match. So I left that side blank. I'm just gonna have to live with it. And if you know how to actually get that to work, feel free to drop that comment and suggestion below. I do not mind. I do not mind at all because it bothers me so much, and the fact that I had to film it, and yeah, okay. But the good news here is that with that Roaring Heights object, like with those skyscraper shells that you can just place on top of buildings, it does wonders in terms of helping the grocery store blend in better, and yeah, helping to build up the skyline and to beef it out just a little bit. Now, the thing about the skyline that I keep talking about is that with the spot building that I've had to do, I've really had to like jump all over the place. I mean, we've got the business and the science building just kind of adding into the skyline there. But those buildings are going to be surrounded by high rises. And when we get back into editing the downtown neighborhood, and when I end off the neighborhood build with some high-rise buildings, it's really going to start to show off how beefy this skyline is going to be. And part of the reason why it will end up looking as dynamic as I'm hoping it will be because of building strategies like this with these Roaring Heights shell buildings. And even though it's not adding in like a whole lot of height, the idea here is to get Midtown to sort of crawl up in height to the downtown levels. And then when we're going into Uptown, it just kind of crawls down into some taller, like low-rise structures that are only 5 floors tall, because we start to get into some Brooklyn-style townhouses and all that. So yeah, that's kind of the idea, and I was sort of missing that crawl up to the height. And when I did the original townhouses here, it just really wasn't doing it for me. So, you know, it was a very necessary change, but a very impactful one that I predict will have even more impact going forward. In my opinion, the only drawback for the Roaring Heights shell objects is that it doesn't exactly play nice when it comes to actually having to play out spaces underneath them. I used them in a previous build for like an arcade just because I wanted to try and beef up the skyline. Turned out hideous, by the way. Glad I never filmed that or ever thought to make it public, but but yeah, anyways, I put like one of the Roaring Heights shell buildings on top of a roof, and from the skyline perspective looked decent, still probably ugly, but when I went to actually go and play in the lot, you know, the object itself doesn't disappear as easily as it needs to. Like, you'll sometimes be playing and then you'll have this object just kind of sitting on top of your screen there. And even when I went to investigate some of the lots that use those objects, because there are surprisingly some housing lots that use the object, that use those skyscraper objects, and yeah, it's not fun to play in, and it's actually quite claustrophobic to play in. So my recommendation is that even though these objects are pretty awesome, I think that they add a lot to the game, and they even light up at night. So there's a lot of thought that went into these objects, but even though they exist in the game, they should really only be used in the manner that I am using them here in this lot build. And by that I mean they should only be placed on lots that are only to be used as rabbit holes. The grocery store, you're never ever, like, it's a rabbit hole building, so you don't actually need to go into the spaces there. Even with the building that I attached it to, like, you don't actually need to go into those spaces at all. I kind of made it like this fake commercial / office building. Again, you don't actually need to go into the building since it's pretty much an empty shell. And yeah, that's the only place I really recommend using these Roaring Heights skyscraper objects in, is just like if you don't have space that needs to compete with that object, then it's good to go. Like, you can play the, you can visit this lot and not have to go down to like the ground level. You can play it from a distance. I hope that all makes sense. So yeah, I wouldn't use this object on any lots that required any live action gameplay. Like, I would never use one of those skyscraper objects from Roaring Heights on a bar where I needed to add in some height. So you won't see that there. I feel like it's too crowded, it's too claustrophobic in terms of gameplay, and I am sticking to that story. But yeah, here it just worked out perfectly for me, and I'm so glad that I kind of discovered that realization while playing this lot, in terms of how to properly use them, because I've used them before, and like I keep mentioning, it just feels too claustrophobic as a player trying to get the most out of a lot when you have one of those skyscraper objects sitting on top and like interrupting what you're trying to do. So yeah, love the objects. They just needed a few tweakings here and there, and they've got a very niche use for them. But on the flip side, it's like, once I get some of these mid-rise structures in Uptown and start building out more of Midtown, it's really going to add in a certain depth that I really wasn't expecting SimCity to have by the end of the build, and I'm very excited for it. So yeah, I'm keeping an open mind to when I'll use them. I might even use them in the lot directly behind this one, like closer to Uptown in, well, I guess I'll spoil it for you, but there will be a restaurant build with the restaurant rabbit hole, since there is like a bistro and a fast food place. But yeah, love the objects. They just have a very niche uses for them. As we finish up the grocery store edits here, like with the fire escapes, which again just add in so much dimension into the streetscape here, and I can't wait to continue using more of these fire escapes. I enjoy them a little too much, I suppose. But anyways, as we finish up, I'll just kind of explain to you guys where I am at in terms of getting SimCity out for you guys. I've probably over-explained this, if I'm going to be completely honest, and I hate to give you the same news again, but please just watch for the trailer to drop for my SimCity world, for the first version to be available for download. Again, I'm exporting that world as a world that doesn't have any lots built onto it, so that players have the option to download the lots if they so choose to. The lots that I have come with a lot of custom content with it. And it's pretty much all custom content from the Sims 3 store. There's only like a few things where I've downloaded from outside of the Sims 3 store, and that includes the food truck mod and also a chandelier. That's really it. I don't use a whole lot of custom content outside of the Sims 3 store other than those things. But yeah, I decided to make those separate because it gives players the choice to download the lots or to create their own world or not. And that's really the experience that I want to give players, is not necessarily one choice or the other, but the ability to create if they so choose. Another reason why I've decided to export the world in that way is that well, create a world didn't work for me, so my hand was forced there. And also, this world is very easy to get into your game if you don't have a whole lot of lots uploaded and or like edited into it. And even though like the game runs smoothly for me, even with all of these lots, and I am predicting it'll continue to run smoothly for me as well. But even though it does run smoothly for me, I want to at least get the world into players' hands, so that if worse came to worse and they downloaded this world with all of the lots on it and it just wasn't working for them, that they wouldn't be out of a custom world to play in. So yeah, couple of options there. I might extend those options at a later time. But yeah, as of right now, as of the time that I am recording the audio for this episode, there's still quite a bit for me to do in terms of exporting the world. And honestly, like, real life has taken a huge influence on that one, just because I've got a lot that I need to do in real life. I kind of need to piece my life back together. So there is that whole situation that I'm dealing with. But yeah, very happy to get this world out to you guys when I do. Again, I'm not promising any dates because it is very hard for me to determine where I'll be at by the time that this episode will release, but as soon as the trailer for the world releases, that's when you guys will know that it is available for public download, as well as all of the lots up until this point. Well, that's gonna about do it for the episode that I wanted to put out today. I've got some tour, well, I've been giving you guys tours this whole time, but there's some pretty neat skyline shots that are coming into play here. And yeah, you guys will be left with those skyline shots as we end off the episode here. Again, I love how the grocery store ended up. The one object that I used from the Roaring Heights DLC, that skyscraper object, just made a huge difference, and I think that'll be a build that continues to get better as I build the city around it. Anyways, I just wanted to take a moment here to say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have yourself a wonderful day.